What's good, creatives? This video right here is going to be about my Canon R8 video settings and photo settings. I'm shooting on the R8 right now in a neutral picture profile, color graded with my personal LUT, which you could find linked down below. But I primarily shoot music videos, I make vlogs and YouTube videos like this, and I also take lifestyle and cityscape urban photography. So if you're interested in anything like that and you use the Canon R8, here are my settings. We'll start off with video. Whenever I'm shooting a vlog for YouTube or a video like this for YouTube, I typically am shooting in a neutral picture profile. On that neutral picture profile, the only one thing that I will change is I'll go into the contrast and I'll take that all the way to the lowest setting possible. The reason that I do this is because I don't want to spend a ton of time color grading and color correcting and all these different things for a simple YouTube video like this, or even a vlog where I'm out and the scenarios are constantly changing. The lighting conditions, the white balance, everything is constantly changing. So I just go ahead and shoot with a neutral picture profile, sometimes in an auto white balance, but typically I'll use a Kelvin and I will match it to whatever the white balance is out there. But the neutral picture profile works for me. I even shoot music videos on it sometimes as well. Also, over like the past 5 years, I've designed my own personal LUT from a 1DX Mark II to R6, R5, R8, and I use that on pretty much all of my neutral picture profile footage, and it works really good for me. It just makes it easy. I get a kind of stylized look that I want without having to apply too much effort and do all this converting footage back to Rec 709 and all this crazy stuff. Sometimes most of the time, it's just better for me. Now, if I'm working on a big project where I want the most dynamic range out of this camera, I will use C-Log 3 in a cinema gamut profile. So a music video, a commercial, ad work, some type of big campaign with a big company, something that's big and I really want to like show off my coloring skills and get the dynamic range that it deserves, and I'm probably going with this C-Log 3 cinema gamut. It just depends. Do I want to do it easy and quick, or do I want to sweat? Do I want to be a sweat? The beautiful thing about using C-Log 3 with Cinema Gamut and using Final Cut Pro like me, once I bring this footage all into the Final Cut program, I can simply convert this footage back to Rec 709 inside of Final Cut Pro with their built-in C-Log 3 Cinema Gamut conversion LUT. Most of the time, it still brings it back to a nice flat space where I can still have a lot of control over it. And then even from there, I can add my Creative Ryan LUT if I want, or another stylized LUT that I've created, or I can deep dive and color grade from scratch. When I'm shooting with C-Log 3, I typically keep the view assist on so I can see what it's gonna look like after it's converted back to Rec 709. I don't like looking at it flat. And on the characteristics, I pretty much keep everything at 0. I'm pretty much shooting 24 frames per second and 60 frames per second in 4K using this camera. The only time that I will use 1080p is if I'm shooting in 120 frames per second or the 180 frames per second. The 120s and the 180s are only in 1080p. Now, if you have the R8, you may have already got this, but when I'm in any type of scenario where I'm shooting for a long time or I'm out in the sun, I will get the overheating bar on my screen. And I haven't necessarily had this camera overheat that many times, maybe 2 or 3 times since I've had it, which I've almost had it for a year's time now. But if I ever want to avoid the camera overheating, it typically does it the most in 4K 60s. So what I will do is I will drop down to 4K light and I will shoot that way, or I'll just drop down to 1080p and sacrifice the quality just to make sure that the camera is not overheating. Like I said, 2 or 3 times this camera has overheated on me, but typically it's just giving me the warning that this camera is getting hot, so be careful. And personally, I hate that. It kind of frightens me when I'm shooting. I don't like to feel like my camera could potentially overheat, even though it's only done it 2 or 3 times. I don't like to see that. So if I know I'm going outside and it's like 90, 95 degrees outside, or I'm out in the desert shooting a music video in Arizona, I'm gonna drop it down to 4K light, or I'm just gonna go down to 1080p and sacrifice that quality because it's not that big of a difference. I personally am shooting 4K 60s over 120 or 180 these days, unless it's something that's happening really, really fast. Ice is dropping into a glass or something like that. I will go to 120 and even 180 if the movement is really, really fast, because you need it to be slower. One of the best features on this camera is the movie cropping. This is my favorite because I could just take one lens with me and get 2 focal lengths essentially. I might have the 16 on here just like this, and then if I cut the movie cropping on, it's gonna multiply it, I believe, by 1.6 times, and you basically get 2 different focal lengths with one lens. This is great if I'm out vlogging or if I'm going to an event and I want to only bring one lens with me and I want it to be a prime, so it's super crispy and low aperture. Typically, I probably bring a 24mm Sigma Art with me, and then I can cut movie cropping on if I want to make it a 24 times 1.6. My audio settings, I always keep it on auto. I don't cut it on manual. I don't feel like dealing with all that. If you just cut it on auto, it typically works great, even with this mic, live mics, any type of mic. I cut it on auto. It's not that serious. focused personally for me and the stuff that I do for YouTube or vlogging, and definitely not music videos because all that audio gets taken out anyway. For the movie servo autofocus speed, keep it always on, and I crank that all the way up to the max. The movie servo autofocus track sensitivity, I usually keep this at around a +1. If I'm doing something like this video right here, or I'm out vlogging with my Canon R8, I'm gonna cut that face tracking on. I will put it on a person or I'll put it on auto. I'm typically keeping that setting on person just because it can lock onto eyes or it can lock onto a face, and it looks really good. Like, it's on my eye right now on this shot right now, and it's been doing a good job. As far as the white balance goes on this camera, I'm typically using the Kelvins because I don't think the auto white balance is that great. Majority of the time, my camera stays on 5600 unless it's super orange tungsten lights in a house or somewhere and I need to dial it back maybe to a 4600 or 4200 or even sometimes a 3600. I really like my white balance to be correct. I don't like the yellow tones and things like that. I like the whites to really just be white. Like that back there, it's probably gonna look white because I'm gonna color grade it a certain way. The image stabilization in this camera is pretty good as well, and I only use it sometimes. It can come in handy if I'm just holding my camera still or if I'm slightly walking a little bit here and there. The enhance can kind of be like a warp stabilizer look sometimes where it just kind of gets stuck and it's just weird. And you got to keep in mind when you add the image stabilization in camera to on or enhanced, you're also getting a crop and then another crop. So I like to do that middle sweet spot. Just cut it on only if you need it. If I got my camera on a gimbal shooting a music video, or if I'm like doing some handheld stuff like really smooth walking, the on setting is gonna kind of help it out, and even if it's not, I'll cut it off. But I think it works good sometimes. I keep this standby low res setting off because I don't want the screen to show me a low resolution of what I'm filming. I want to see the resolution as it is. I want to see how good it looks. I also set custom buttons on this camera as well, and these are the two that I do. I set the right button on the directional pad to false color. False color basically pops up and it shows you if your image is exposed or not. I like to have that on the right button, so I just push it real quick, check the shot, see if it looks pretty exposed. If it needs to come down or go up, I fix the settings and make it to where it should be. Click that right button and it's back off, and then I can hit record and just start filming. It's just quick to check and see if like my hot spots are blown out or if it's too dark in certain spaces. It just makes it quick and easy for me whenever I'm out on the go, shooting neutral picture profile, vlogging, shooting a music video, whatever the case may be. The other custom button is the autofocus on button on the back of the camera. I set that to eye detection settings. So basically I can make it focus on the eye settings by pushing that autofocus on button, or click it again and it can set to the right eye of the subject. Hit it again, it can go to the left eye of the subject. Hit it again, you can cut the eye detection completely off and just rely on face detection. I just keep that on there just in case. If it's a person and I'm trying to lock on their eye and get really sharp focus, I'll click it on. If it's messing up or it's not able to capture or it's hunting, autofocus hunting, I'll just click that off real quick. It just makes it quick and easy for me when I'm in the middle of shooting. All right, let's talk about the photo settings real quick. It's nothing crazy, very simplistic. Let's get into it. I shoot all my photos raw because I want to be able to manipulate the colors and the exposure whenever I want. I'm slapping my CR preset and all my other cool Lightroom presets onto those photos as well. And I'm working on a pack. Actually, it might be out right now. Look down in the description. There might be a pack for the R8 Lightroom presets as well. Again, image cropping, just like the movie cropping, works really cool as well. I can take one lens with me and cut this 1.6 times crop factor on and get a different focal length. I love this feature so much. The clarity on this camera, I don't know why they did this. I do not add clarity in camera on photos or videos. One thing I slept on this camera was the creative filters. I actually just checked these out recently. There's two that I really like. The grainy black and white creative filter is actually pretty cool when you use it taking photos and stuff. It adds a black and white filter, which is pretty nice and premium, and then it adds grain into it. It just looks really cool in my opinion. I just was asleep on it. I didn't know it was this good. And then also the soft focus looks really cool. It looks dreamy, it looks hazy, it just has this cool effect to it. Those are the only two creative filters that I like on this camera though, and it's pretty cool. I mean, you could use this feature, you know, like I said, if you're out event, working with a celebrity, working with a client that you just want to get those photos done really quick, you shoot with that creative filter, slap it back to them. I don't know, try it. I personally do not like the electronic shutter mode or the sound of it. It's kind of gross to me. I use first reverse curtain shutter mode because it feels good and it sounds good to me. It's just what I like to use. As far as this servo autofocus settings mode or whatever, I keep this on auto. I don't go to any specific mode. I keep it on the auto so that it can judge pretty much whatever scenario I'm in. As far as the autofocus goes with photo and even the video, I'll use the 1 point and put the point on whatever I want to be focused on, or I'll use the whole area while having the face person tracking on as well. Sometimes I'll cut that off if it keeps catching and I want it to focus on 1 point, but it just depends on the scenario. If I'm trying to keep track of a person, I'll have the face tracking, the person tracking on. If I just want to focus on 1 point, then I'll cut that off and focus that point on whatever it is I'm trying to focus on. All right, finally, custom buttons when I'm shooting photos. These are important to me. I customize the autofocus on button to the autofocus operation. So basically, if I'm using that little square, the 1 point autofocus square, I'll put that square where I want it to be. I'll tap the shutter button and let it focus 1 time for the 1 hit, and boom, take that picture. But if I'm trying to track something that's moving like this, going all around, and I need it to keep focusing consistently or continuously, I will quickly hit that autofocus on button and it'll switch over to servo autofocus. So being able to click that button really quick to switch from continuous autofocus or just 1 shot, 1 point autofocus is vital for me, especially when I'm taking photos, I'm out running through the city trying to take stuff, just boom, boom, I can switch back and forth, autofocus on. I like that setting. And then I've also customized the star button for autofocus point to center. I don't know why they didn't do this on the Canon R8, but typically if you're moving your 1 shot square around on your camera and you want to bring it back to the center, there'll be somewhere for you, a button for you to push to bring that point back to the center. You have to touch it on the screen. I set it to the star so I can quickly just use my thumb, push the star button, and bring that autofocus point straight back to the center. I like to keep it in the center all the time. Even if I'm like moving it, I like to be able to bring it back to the center. I don't know, it might be OCD, whatever the case may be. That's how I like to do it. I've got it set to the star button. It works good. So those are my settings for music videos, vlogging, YouTube videos, photos, and everything on this Canon R8. If you have any other questions or if I missed anything, make sure to drop a comment down below in the comment section so I can answer that. If you have a Canon R8, cheers, let's get it. And I hope this helps you make better videos and photos or just your whole experience using the Canon R8. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Slap that like button. Peace.